Hello, hello, hello. Today I'm talking with Jan Van Ryswyck. We talked about painting walls, DJing at the age of 15, and leaving a habitable planet behind. I'm Yves Hanul from Who's Agile. My pronouns are he and him. Welcome to my channel. You see a lot of agilists around me on this screen. If you want to hear me interviewing, please click that subscribe button because these are the people that I've invited so far. If you think I'm missing people, let me know in the comments. And that like button, well, if you liked today's interview, don't forget to click it. Hello everyone, and hello with me I have Jan. Jan, I don't even know how to pronounce your last name in English. Ryswyck, is that something that should be?
Jan Van Ryswyck, yes.
Yeah. And for the people, to show us a little bit where we are, let's bring Google in on where we are. And this is Ghent, where I am, or Drongen, close to Ghent. And then we're moving not that far away, Brecht. So we're staying in Belgium. And on my side, this is just, let's say, close to 6:30 in the evening. And you're in Belgium, so we're in the same time.
Yes.
And Jan, for the few people that don't know you, before we jump into the questions, could you introduce yourself a little bit? What do you want people to know about you?
Well, I'm a software developer. I started out in year 2000, right after Y2K.
Oh, you missed that.
Yeah, I was still at school, so I missed all the fun. So I've been a professional software developer since then, which is more than 24 years now. I've also been blogging since 2005. And I'm a freelance technical coach since 2016. A couple of years back, I published or self-published my own book, which is called Writing Maintainable Unit Tests.
Right.
And my most popular repository on GitHub is called Awesome Talks, where I curate a list of amazing talks that shaped my thinking.
True. I should remember to add that link as well to the show notes because it's a nice way to see all the changes that are happening there. And that's I really like because it's a different kind of way of sharing information in a way, right? So I really like that one. So thanks for already mentioning that and sharing that. I think it's how would I say it? It's an interesting way of using GitHub that I think more and more people are doing, not just focusing on code, but also on other kind of documents that need or that with the advantage of having some history and changes and everything like that. So that's a nice way of using GitHub, I would say, and connecting, especially because it's a developer audience basically. Yeah? For you're writing it, so that's a nice way as an introduction to yourself on the different kind of things that you have been doing. For the people that don't know, we've been running into each other on and off for the past couple of, like you say, 24 years probably, at multiple kind of events, mostly in Belgium, but sometimes I think might be even outside. Well, let's jump into these questions. What is something that people usually don't know about you, but has influenced you in who you are?
Yeah. Some people know this about me, but most people don't. I've been a DJ in several Belgian well-known and lesser known clubs.
Wow.
And I did that for about 12 years.
Wow.
So it was even before I knew I liked writing software. day in, day out. So I started out at 15. I wasn't even allowed to be in a club, but I was already DJing there. Yeah, I did that for 12 years, and that yeah, I've seen a lot of good things, um, fun times. Also, not I've also seen some not that good things happen.
Unhealthy things and stuff like that, I assume. Could you, before we dive much more, how were you able as a 15-year-old person to be get yourself wigged in as in a club to DJ? Because like you say, it's you're not allowed to go in, so it's not like you could talk to the people at the party or something. So how did you happen to be able to do that?
Well, so my parents, so we where we lived next door, my parents rented, yeah, a club to folks.
Mm,
So they didn't manage it themselves; they rented it out, and other people were managing the club. So yeah, it went back way before that. So literally, when I was born, there has always been
a
that club.
club.
Yeah, on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, sometimes even Thursday and Monday. So it's always been there for me, and I've always been around DJs for as long as I remember. So and that's how it started. There was this one time on a Sunday evening, a DJ didn't show up, and the owner, yeah, he was like pretty stressed out. And I mentioned, yeah, let me try it.
He
And
basically had no choice
yeah, I
because
basically had no choice. So okay, so I did, and I played a couple of hours, and it was probably the worst mix ever. But yeah, I did it.
I like that. I like that because it basically you did that, and like you say, or like I said, he did not much have not much choice, but after that he realized, hey, maybe the mixing might not been perfectly well, but it created, I guess, some atmosphere in the club, and people danced, and it's like, okay,
Yeah, it
let's do this
opened.
again.
Yeah, it opened some doors that, and it gave me some opportunities later on. Like where I back in the day, we were all using vinyl records. So when I went to my first time when I went to a record store, half the DJs that were there, I already knew. So it was like, hey, how are you? Long time no see. Here, have a seat. Let's have a drink. Let's talk. Uh, and then we started talking about, yeah, this record where I play, this works, and if you play it at that time or at that kind of mood, and it works best. And yeah, then you start, yeah, rolling into it.
And did you have some favorite style of music, or just one style, or did you do everything, or how did that go?
Yeah, mostly it was, yeah, it was mostly on the, it was called the commercial circuit, where we played like top 40 hits, or but also club, like the best club hits, which was all kinds, like clubhouse, sometimes a bit of techno, trance, but also some hip hop and R&B. So
But yeah, so but that's a little bit why I was asking, because sometimes clubs are very specific in just in one genre, but
mhm.
many clubs are rather open to to
Yeah,
attract the people, of course, depending on the, how would I say it, the interest of the business interest of the owner to say, okay, let's focus just on one thing, or no, we want to have different. That's why I'm asking.
yeah.
And so
Back in the day, I was well known for opening with Rage Against the Machine.
within clubs that might already been some
Yeah, as
uh,
a
more different kind of style. um makes me think more about youth clubs than really, yeah, the kind of clubs that when I'm thinking about commercial things. But then again, at that moment, it was at some point so commercial. I think that's one of the reasons why they quit at some point, because they felt it becoming too commercial for them.
Yeah, but it always worked. It always worked. It didn't resonate with all people, but it always worked.
Well, I think for me, one of the things I think indeed, I think that's the same thing with when you do a talk and when you, yeah, when the first few minutes you introduce yourself, and in a way it should be different than other things. And when it's very clear, hey, okay, I make that statement, I'm on stage now, people know, like, okay, Jan started because that's his song. I
Mhm.
can imagine that. And did you have a song where you always ended with, or was that?
Yeah, it was the live MTV session recording from Eric Clapton, Layla.
Hmm. Okay,
It was
so
always the vibe. Yeah,
slowing down with
the record
interesting.
before could be still
Anything?
very upbeat and house techno trance, but the last record was always that one.
Yeah, I'm asking because I have a history of DJ as well, and I remember so I played in 1 year, a full year in a holiday resort in France, and I know that resort because I used to go there before. And I know that every time, indeed, they ended up with one song, and it was every year it was a different song, but every time it was a slow song as a kind of end of it. And I know that when I started that, I said, okay, I want to have one single number, but I don't want to be a slow song, because for me that's the only moment I can dance. So I choose always "Sympathy from the Devil" from the Rolling Stones, the live version. I don't remember anymore. I think it's 12 minutes or something. So I had time to dance, put it on, dance, and then go back to my DJ booth to clean up, a bit like that. But yeah, I was asked the question because I think, especially if you're regular in a certain place, then people know, okay, this is the last thing. I think I've learned that in that club, that there it was important to have something like, okay, this is kind of the closing of the evening. I think that's in a way. So 12 years is a rather long period, and I guess multiple kind of clubs and other kind of things. Um, I guess so 12 from 12 for 15, 12 years is 27. By then you were already working in IT, or
Yeah,
how should
yeah.
I see?
So yeah, that was the reason why. So I couldn't manage combining software development, being a DJ, and having a family with 3 young kids.
Wow.
So
Already
I,
at the year of 27,
at the year
or
of 27, yeah, around
wow.
that period,
Okay.
my wife was pregnant from our third one coming up. And at some point, I was driving home like 6 in the morning, and I said, "Yeah, this is not sustainable anymore." I had to stop doing it. Although I rather enjoyed it still, but I've seen it. I was at that point where I told myself, you know what, I've seen it all. Um, let's slow down. Um, and then, yeah, it went basically silent. Um, and then back in 2019, uh, like, yeah, 6 months before COVID hit, everything started picking up again.
Wow. How did that happen? Was that
Wh- Yeah, this it's a rather compelling story. So I think it was somewhere in March. Um, I got a call from another DJ, and he said, "Yeah, um, uh, back in the day, one of the places where I played on Friday, He was also playing in a different club in the same town, and he said, "Yeah, we want to do a reunion. So, are you up for it?" And at first, I was like, "Yeah, I'm not sure. You know what? Things have changed. DJs don't use vinyl anymore. I only have vinyl records."
You still have all your vinyl?
Yeah, I still have all my vinyl records, all 8,000 of them.
Wow.
And so I said, I'm not sure. And then he convinced me by saying, "Yeah, but it's going to be very small, and most people I know, and you know them as well, probably. And if we have like 150 people, then that should be more than enough for us to cover expenses. And then, yeah, let's just for fun, and then let's see what happens." I say, "Okay, then let's do it." So it was scheduled in June, somewhere in June. So yeah, and then a few weeks before, I got a bit nervous. So I rented some Pioneer gear just to get a feel on how to do things with the modern stuff. And then the evening came, and at first I was asked to play a set of 2 hours. So I came in around 11:30 in the evening, and there was a few people already, maybe 40 people or so. And yeah, the guy said, "Yeah, you know what? Let's just wait for half an hour, and then I'll stop, and then you can play your 2 hours, and then you can, then you can go home." I said, "Sure, okay." So we waited. So a few more people came, and then at some point said, "Yeah, let's just go ahead." And then I just put up my first record. It wasn't Rage Against the Machine. It was something else that I started. I don't know. I can't remember anymore. And I just maxed out the volume. And I just started it with like this drop beat, and then within like the next 15 to 20 seconds, the entire place was packed with people.
Wow.
Like we went from 60 to 70 people. I saw everyone coming in, and before we knew it, the manager stood right beside me, and he said, "You know what? This is the largest crowd I've seen in this place in the past 2 years."
Wow.
And there was like 400 or 500 people starting to dance, shouting, like I got really, really nervous at that time. And at some point, so I just picked up, and it went like just like in the old days. And after an hour, the other DJ came around, and he said, "You know what? Let's." I already booked another. I also booked another DJ, but I already canceled him. Let's just do it, just the two of us, the entire night. Is that okay for you? I say, "Okay, let's do it." It's like the adrenaline was pumping again, and so I say, "Okay, but I want to have a break." Okay, so I went outside just to get some fresh air, and I was standing there, and there were like 300 people at the door waiting and trying to get in, and they weren't allowed to come in because the entire club was packed, like with 600 to 700 people. There was 300 people outside. So, and it was like an amazing night. We played, I think we stopped at 7 in the morning, and there were still like 200 people on the dance floor.
Wow.
It was insane. And the manager came to me, and he said, "You know what? You're not going to leave without leaving your phone number. And we want to do this again." And then a few weeks later, everything started picking up again. We did it this another time with the same success, and then some more requests came in, and then COVID hit,
And then
and
it
then
was all over
everything,
again.
and then it was all over again.
It's a very nice story. It's a very nice story. Yeah, I have a similar but much less impressive story that the youth club where I played a lot was also doing a celebration. I don't know, 40 years or something like that, and so he asked a lot of the old DJs back. But of course, everybody wanted the top spots because everybody like, hey, we want to do, but I'm so good. And some of them I knew, some other I didn't know because they played before or after my time. And I said, okay, but I'll do the opposite. You know what? I'll do the starting point, but I'll bring my son. And like everybody else, I had like half an hour, and I had an hour. And because we did the starting, we actually said, but I want even to start an hour earlier. And where they would, yeah, you know how that goes when there's not that many people, they just put on something and said, no, I will work with my son. And we played 2 hours, which was very fun. Not many people at that moment yet at the club, because yeah, we started very early, but it was nice to do something together with my son in a way.
Hmm.
And I recognized the adrenaline, like never done it, and never done it in like 10 years or more. And it's like, okay, it's yeah, will I be able to do it, how it's, and all the stress the days before. And then in the end it works out fine.
Yeah,
And then yeah, it's
it's old habits.
old habits. And I've noticed also the same thing. It's okay, I bring my vinyl. I don't have 8,000 records, but I did brought my vinyl. But we used, because my son was helping, we used also two computers and software. So most of the time we did a kind of, yeah, mix of CDs, vinyls, computer stuff. And yeah, I was very nervous up front because of all the technology, because DJ said there's always some things that are breaking. Luckily for us, nothing broke. Did you have it in your experience, things breaking, things not working in everything that you did in these 12 years?
Oh yeah, several things broke down. I remember yeah, someone asking me, yeah, can you play this record for me? But she was like hanging over
Oh,
the mixer,
mixing decks, yeah.
and she had a like a glass of beer, and while she was
Asking
making her
pour the
move,
beer.
she was spilling all the beer over the mixer and everything. Yeah, everything, all the electricity went down, entire place went black, and then everything came up again, and then the mixer was like basically dead. And they
Wow. And how
called.
did you solve it?
I didn't. So the manager called um, for another mixer to be brought, but that would take for like an hour. And then there was like, maybe one channel still working slightly. So I put up a mix that I made, was still with cassette tapes. So I played the cassette tape, and after 45 minutes, it stopped. So I had to turn the cassette tape, and then. But yeah, most of the people already left. There were some people still hanging around, but nobody knew what was going on. Everyone was like, "Yeah, this is not going to happen anymore tonight."
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, that's probably the worst thing that can happen. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was very, I don't know what's the right word, but I was very strict on not having any, I would not even say alcohol, but any drinks near the disc, the mixing table. And I could be very strict on that because I
Yeah.
was so afraid of actually, and I actually never heard about someone who had that, but I was so afraid of this happening. I
Hmm.
was like, yeah, that if that happens, like basically, indeed, your night is over. So that is indeed a very horrible story to be there and to be, yeah, standing at that desk because you know it's not your fault, but at the same time, it's like, come on,
Yeah,
You ruined
you are the
my
one standing there for like hundreds of people, and they're all looking at you. So yeah,
Yeah, I definitely recognize this, and that's yeah, it's the most horrible story that I can imagine at the DJ or any kind of thing. When something goes wrong with technology, and everything is down, that's not the nicest thing to have. Okay, I want to move to that next question. If you had not been doing what you've been doing now, do you have any idea what would have become of you?
yeah, um, yeah. Probably a DJ. uh, um, if it wasn't for that, probably something like painter, like not uh, an artist painter, but more like painting walls and doors and
Hmm.
uh, stuff like that.
And is that and where is that idea coming from? Were you trained for that, or is that something you
No, not really.
help?
Because I did all the painting here in my house. Um, I I have the let's say I have the patience to do it. I find it
Hmm.
relaxing at times. So and according to other people, I'm pretty good at it. I
Because
wouldn't say
indeed,
that about myself, but other people regularly ask me, "Well, that's actually pretty nice or well done. Can you do some painting job at my place?" But then I have to refuse because I don't have I don't have the time for that.
but it's nice to be well recognized by people for work that you do, even if you did it for yourself or other kind of things. It's always nice when people see something in you that, or at least it is for me, when people see something in
Hmm.
me that I didn't do. So that's indeed interesting when you say that, like, okay, this is what I recognize, how people yeah, bring that to me about that. And is that, where did you learn it? Is that by doing everything yourself in your house, or did you learn that at home from parents or friends, or
No, just by doing it. Um, I don't know anyone who does that professionally, except for my neighbor. He's retired now, but he did that for like 45 years.
and
Um,
did he give you some advice when you started, or is
no,
that just
no, no,
independent?
no, no. Even I even moved in like maybe 5 or 6 years ago, so I didn't know him back then. Um, but he was also one of the people who mentioned that it was a job well done. So
Wow, and that's nice, because especially when he's a
yeah,
professional and he tells you that, that means like, oh, okay, you really know what you're doing. If a professional tells you like, hey, you're really good at that, that's nice. Um, that's nice to hear. Um,
I
but like
probably
you said,
wouldn't. I probably wouldn't earn much because I'm very slow and I'm like with the pencils and very slow, and everything has to be perfect aligned and straight, and yeah, or otherwise I'll start over again. And like if you want to do that commercially or like a profession, then you have to be a lot
but
faster, I think.
well, depends on the prices, of course.
Yeah,
If
indeed.
you can convince people like, hey, you want that quality, that's my price. It's yeah, the money. It really depends on how much the customer or the fool wants to give you. If they think
Hmm.
like, hey, it's worth that. Um, I think this is true in any, even in IT. If you want to deliver
Indeed.
good things, it might seem that it takes a longer time when you do it correctly, but actually, if you ask me, if you yeah, do a crappy job, it might be faster done, it might look cheaper, but yeah, in the end you might pay more to get the problems out of it. So yeah, and I can imagine that for painting, doing it all over. It's not like you can just take the paint off. You mean like that takes also time. So it's typically you would have to paint over it, which means after a couple of times doing it, that's becoming too thick. So it's probably not healthy either. So yeah, I can imagine that doing it right the first time or taking the time to do it good might have a better result. So that's something I didn't recognize. Well, both of these stories, the fact that as a DJ, I that's a part of you that I didn't know, and the painter part I definitely didn't know either. And it's a surprising one in a way that it's a new one, and at the same time I see similarities with, like you say, the quality of the code and the quality of your work that you do.
Yeah, it's like in code, you have to, if you want some decent code, you have to slow down.
Exactly.
And if you want to go faster, you have to slow down even more.
It reminds me of how I don't remember who or what said it, but there is some kind of quote of a person that says that if you want to have, I don't know, a
If you want to
healthy
go well, you have to go slow.
it was something like you need it was about yoga, and it was like then you need 1 hour of yoga every week or every day or something like that. And if you really have a lot of work and a lot of stress, then you need to take 2 hours. It's like the complete opposite of what most people would do. They would say, oh, too much stress, too much things on my mind, let's not do it. No, that's when you need it even more.
Yeah.
And although I don't do yoga, I can definitely recognize that part, like slowing down and taking time to breathe, to get central, I would say, is really important in many different ways. So real nice stories. Let's move to that third question. What do you consider your biggest challenge, and why is that a good thing for you?
Well, as you might know, I teach. I'm a technical coach, so I teach workshops, and I also, I'm doing some consultancy and coaching with software teams. And the biggest challenge for me, or the biggest challenge that I set for myself, is to be able to teach complex topics in an easy and understandable way. And I think one of my role models there is Richard Feynman. If you know him, it's the scientist who was able to explain some very difficult and complex topics from physics in an easy and understandable way. So if I ever want to grow up, then I want to be able to teach complex topics in an easy and understandable way, just like Richard Feynman did back in the day.
Wow. That's a high bar, I would say.
Yeah, indeed, I will probably never reach it, but that's not the point. It's being able to, and sometimes I get that feedback, like, yeah, you make it sound so easy, make it sound so simple, and I take that as a compliment, because that actually means that I'm somewhat succeeding in this journey.
Right. And how would I say it? Is that what triggers you? Where did you care about that kind of thing? Because you talk about Richard Feynman. Is that something that you ran into like at school or something like that, or how do you come to that metaphor of using him as a way to explain complex stuff?
Yeah, because at some point, people were already telling me this before I even knew about Richard Feynman. Like, yeah, you can explain things that are complex in an easy and understandable way. Or for people who don't know about the exact topic, but are still able to have a grasp of what it is from like a higher level. And then I learned and I read Richard Feynman's books, and I read about the people who knew him, and then things started clicking. Like, yeah, he's getting at the same, yeah, he's getting the same responses that I sometimes have. So
That's nice that people already see that in you, independent of.
it isn't always the case, but that triggers me to, because then I know that I don't know. I have to learn more, and that triggers me like, okay, if you're not able to explain it in an easy way, then it's probably because that I don't understand it myself well enough. And I have to go deeper. I have to, dig up some more.
Yeah, I really like that, because it's a sentence I've heard before. It's like, okay, it really takes, you need to understand it at a more deeper level, that you can, okay, step out, create some metaphors, or create some way to explain it in a way that people that don't have your knowledge understand it. And sometimes I can imagine this is for developers, but I assume it's also to explain it to non-developers why working in that way as a developer might be important. Is that a correct assumption?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And also, this is something that I also picked up back in the day from when I was a DJ. So what I try to do is try to gather as much of other people's viewpoints about a certain topic as I can. So if there are like 50 books written about test-driven development, I will not stop with reading one. I will probably read all of them.
Okay.
And from every book, all the books say you have to red green refactor. That's all the same. But at some point, every author or every person who talks about test-driven development just brings some new thing, some new viewpoint to the table, and that other viewpoint might trigger something that makes it understandable for yourself. Just that tiny bit more. Like you think you already know everything about it, and then someone comes up with a metaphor or with an anecdote, and it's like, yeah, that's actually perfect. And then that just pushes the things like 1 millimeter further, but that's still going further.
And is that then, because you wrote your book on maintainable unit test, is that then something that you use to say, okay, now I want to write my book? Are you making sure you get all these ideas from these other books, or how does that work for you?
Yeah, that was basically it was actually meant as a manifest for learning and doing test-driven development for like 15 years at that point. Having all those inputs and seeing all those mistakes happen, and I say, okay, this is what I learned about it, and this is what I know about it at that point in time. And I've learned, since I wrote the book, I've learned many new things since then. So if I have to write a second edition, it will probably be entirely different. Not entirely, but there will be some new stuff, some new viewpoints, some new phrases, some new insights. It's a journey, and writing the book is just a snapshot of what you know at that point in time in your journey.
I want to go back to something you said just a little bit earlier. You talked about being a manifesto, but if I compare the Agile Manifesto and your book, the Agile Manifesto is like 2 pages. Your book is like what, 300, 400 pages? So I was kind of surprised using that word. Um, is there anything specific why you used the word manifesto? Because it seemed rather important when you made that statement.
Yeah, because I see, and that's something that I try to solve with doing the workshops and speaking at conferences, is that that people think, yeah, I know TDD, it's red green refactor, and you write a test before you code. Yeah, but we don't do that actually. But yeah, we know what the thing is. But there's a lot more to
Hmm.
test-driven development, and there's a lot of jargon and terms and meaningful patterns that people think or developers think they know, but they actually don't know.
Hmm.
So that was at some point I was like, yeah, I want to reach a broader audience to make developers aware of these concepts, and rather than explaining them to my coworkers and colleagues and peers, I wanted to, yeah, write down what I knew at that time about the practice and all the patterns that are associated with it.
And so, are you then um, yeah, how would I say it? Then going into explaining all these different kind of things? Because you
Uh,
said you have people that they think they understand something, and at the same time, I know that they're not, because that basically they don't do it or they don't understand it correctly.
what?
Um,
Yeah, the most pivotal example there is like uh, the use of testables. Like
mm,
everyone tells, yeah, I use mocks, or I don't use mocks, or I hate mocks, or I don't like them, or I like them very much. And then, a mock is just a single pattern of a testable. A mock is a testable, but a testable is not a mock. There are other
mm,
kinds of testables with their own very specific characteristics. And one of those characteristics is also related to coupling between tests and production code. And when it comes to coupling between tests and production code, a mock is basically the worst pattern that you can use.
mhm.
But there
So
are
yeah,
other ones, and those also have some kind of coupling, but not as tightly coupled. And making people aware of that, sometimes, yeah, people get surprised, like, yeah, I've been doing this for so many years, and I still don't know the difference between a mock and a stub. And you explain that to me now. And now I can go back to my team and explain that to everyone, because I want everyone to know what the difference is between a mock and a stub, for
mm.
example.
Yeah, I'm asking because indeed, and I remember it's been a while since I've read your book, but I do know that there is quite a few patterns in there that is about about how do you have some of these things. So that's what I like about with that book, that you're saying like, okay, there is ways of doing it, and there is multiple styles of doing or writing unit tests, but you also talk about some kind of I would say um, unit test patterns in a way,
Mhm.
and that's so that's I think important. That's why a little bit I was asking: is there some kind of glossary or some kind of things about learning the words? And that's a little bit I was chasing for these patterns, and you gave a really nice example of that. I think that's important because just like you, I see a lot of people. Well, the wider we spread things, the thinner it gets. We know that, and that, unit testing. In one way, it's nice that everybody has now heard about it. Well, when I was starting, it was either people didn't hear about it or they thought it was bullshit or whatever. Now it seems to be much more accepted, and at the same time, nobody's doing it the way we should be doing. Now, the second part of that question is, so the question was, what is your biggest challenge, and why is that a good thing for you? Is there anything particular that's good about that part?
Well, because I really enjoy doing teaching and coaching. Something that I learned over the past years is that I really enjoy doing it. Um, um, like 15 years ago, I did um, I did a talk at a software conference, and I was so nervous, and the days before it, and I went on stage, and it didn't go well, at least as far as I was concerned. And I came out of that room and I said, I will never do this again. And then at some point, so I started writing the book, and then um, someone asked me, yeah, can you do a workshop on this topic? Because we might be interested. And then I started preparing a workshop, and then I did the workshop. And afterwards, I was like, I want to do this for the rest of my working days as much as possible because I really, really enjoy that.
That's
And
a big difference from one to the other.
yeah, and today, if I have to deliver a talk, I'm not nervous. I used to be nervous, but I'm no longer nervous. It might also have something to do with back in the day when I was DJing for thousands of people. I came up, I put on a vinyl record. Like if there were like 200 people or 3,000 people, I didn't care. I just did my thing and I enjoyed it. And now I have the same feeling with doing workshops and teaching the concepts of TDD and XP, and I have the exact same feeling. So that's
That's
that's why I find that important for me.
Yeah, I can imagine that, especially when you've been at the other side, you've been at like you tried it in a way and it felt bad for you. Not sure if indeed, like you say, you don't know how the others felt, but you didn't come off stage there with a good feeling, and now you're at a completely different edge. Um, especially important when you care so much about a topic like this, because of course then you want to spread that message much more, and in a way a book is a good way to spread it very wide, and then you don't have wide and yeah, meaning you don't have to talk to everybody at the same time because people can read it at their own pace, and at the same time when they don't understand it, yeah, you can't sit next to them and say, oh, this is you have to reread this again. In a training you can actually, they can ask questions and you can go much more
Mhm.
deeper. So I can definitely understand that yeah, it's also giving energy, because yeah, writing is a very lonely thing, and when you do a workshop you get the feedback and you see how people are using it. The example you just gave, when someone tells you like, oh, I want to go back to my team and I want to teach them and show them like, hey, this is actually, yeah, how valuable it brings to me. So now I want to teach my own team about these differences. That's really, yeah, it gives a lot of energy. It would give me a lot of energy. I
Yeah,
assume it's the
it
same for you.
is very energizing, at least for me at this point in my career.
Mhm. I can definitely see that. Well, and that kind of brings me to that next question about, because I know you're a driven person. I see a lot of passion. We just talked about some passion. Do you know where that drive and that passion is coming from?
Uh, yeah, I what I don't know actually. I think it's about improving myself, learning something new every day,
Hmm.
but I'm not sure where it comes from. Um, Sometimes it drives my wife crazy because I'm doing it with everything that I do, which sometimes sets me up for things that I want to improve, and then it costs me a lot of time, and that time is coming from other things, and then before you know it, my day is packed from morning till evening. I don't know where that comes from. Sometimes I have to be careful with that as well, that I say, you know what, I might be able to improve this or that situation, but I have to let it go, because otherwise it will hijack, or it will cost me so much time in the end that not at this moment that I'm not able to do that.
That's and how do you protect this?
I'm very bad at this protection thing. Yeah, I don't know. It's a struggle. I like I said, I'm very bad at that, and I usually roll into things
Well,
again
yeah.
and or anew, and yeah.
Well, yeah, we were talking about improving yourself. Your DJ story, how you restarted again. It's like, oh,
It's one
I
of
don't,
those
yeah, I
journeys.
don't want
Yeah,
to do it, and then it's like, oh, just do it for 2 hours, and before you know it, you're until there until 7 in the morning, and then you need to basically do it all over again.
yeah,
And I think especially when you do something really well, it's hard to say no to people, because people appreciate you if you I know when there is a crowd of a couple of hundred people cheering and dancing, that gives a lot of energy. But like you say, your life is, you're not 20 anymore. You're definitely not 15 anymore. So it's completely different kind of thing. And yeah, all these kids in the club, they, or whatever party it is, most of them will sleep in and do whatever, and you might be having to work the next day, or at least on the Monday, if you do it even on a Friday evening. I don't know how it is for you, but if I'm up until 7 in the morning, I definitely need 2 nights of good sleep before I can work and get up again earlier, because at 50, well, sorry, my body needs more time to recuperate.
yeah, indeed, yeah, indeed. Yeah,
So
so
yeah.
luckily these days uh, the DJ gigs have changed radically. Nowadays the DJ plays like 1 hour, maybe 2 hours at one place, and then it stops. Back in the day, I had to play like from 10 to 6 or from 10 to 7. I even did a New Year's Eve once. So I started at 10, the last day of the year. And the last record that I played was like 12:30 the next day, straight,
Wow.
without breaks. So it was like, yeah, I can't even know how I managed to stand straight until that point. But I did, because you're young, and then
That's what you do.
you go
uh,
back home, you go to sleep, you wake up again, and then you step into your car, and then you go to the next one. You do it all over again, and then without any hassle. If I had to do that again today, if I sometimes play here at my house, I still have everything. So if I play for like an hour, then I have to take a nap just
mhm,
to get my energy levels back.
mhm. Um, yeah, I recognize a lot of these stories. That's yeah, I think, and I think it also, when we talk about being bad at saying no, I think these days this is why we do have sometimes, well, DJs with managers that should be saying no, and if they're not, then you see. Large DJs or athletes or anybody else who might be having a problem, a healthcare problem because they're not well protected. If it's a manager that wants to get as much out of them as possible, yeah, that works in the short run, but in the long run, it eats
Yeah,
these
indeed.
people up. If you have a good manager, they might protect you and say, well, you know what, then we do less. And if people are more interested in you, probably will ask more money. And but that way you can keep your sanity and you keep your saying. And it's from my point of view, it's easier for a third party to say no than yourself, because it's hard to say no to your friends or to whoever is asking you directly, and it's actually that person's job to say, well, to look for the both the yeses and the nos. Of course, the way I was a DJ, of course, I didn't need a manager. It's not that I was that I needed at that kind of level, but I can imagine if once you have a certain level, that really helps in many ways to
These
say no.
days, I run things. I ask my wife, should I do this? I see this big deficiency there, or should I help them, or should I do this? Should I do that? And if she says, yeah, you shouldn't be bothered by that, then I have to consider that. And if she says, yeah, maybe that's a good idea, then okay, that might be some valuable time that I can spend there
I
trying
see
to help.
I see many one people companies where indeed the person says, okay, I want to check with my partner, even if it's a way to pause the interaction. But it's always important to say, like, okay, is that the right balance for the work, also for the family, and on all kind of different kind of ways? And that's it's a healthy way. It's also a kind of appreciation and a kind of saying, like, okay, I know that you're looking from it from a different point of view than just me wanting to help that person. Because let's face it, there's enough people that need help and that want help, but that doesn't mean we can help them all. That still is impossible at some level. But accepting that as a person is for me rather hard to say. Like, yeah, but I could help this or could help that. I definitely recognize what you're saying there. That asking your partner is actually a good idea to find that balance.
Yeah, indeed.
I want to move to that next question. What do you consider your biggest achievement so far?
Yeah, I think that's having raised three amazing kids. I think nothing else comes close.
And what's the age they have at this moment?
So my son now is 22. And then I have two daughters. The eldest one is 20, and the youngest one is 18.
So indeed, like you say, raised. They're all three adults in a way. It's
Yeah,
we
in a
we,
sense.
we keep being parents, of course, until
Yeah,
we die.
obviously.
But at the same time, there is a difference. When they reach the age of 18, it's like, okay, they're legally allowed to do a lot more stuff on their own, and they don't need us officially anymore for any decisions. So I can see it as indeed, well, not finished as raising, but definitely as a big step already. um, that is nice as a way, and at the same time it's never a finished achievement, I would say.
No, indeed. Indeed.
And I do remember in some of the events that we talked that, we always have still challenges, I would say, with our children. They're completely different than when they're young. And of course, we don't want to have the challenges of our adult children online. That's not the goal of having this conversation. But at the same time, I think it's very nice to see that where I don't know if what you want to share, but are there things in that achievement, things that you've learned along the way as a parent?
Huh. Uh, I've learned that as a parent, you can never be fully prepared for what's coming.
Oh, that is so true. That's so true. Every time you think we're going to the next phase, things will be easier, and then they drop something else on you. Like, what?
Yeah, there's always this other kind of curveball they're throwing at you that, yeah, that completely baffles you. Once you think you've seen it all, then some other random stuff happens, and then yeah, then you think, yeah, what am I doing?
But at the same time, when I hear you say you're proud of that achievement, it also feels that you're rather relaxed on some of the curveballs that are still hitting you today. Is it like you don't get stressed of these, or you do get stressed about some of the things?
I'm not someone who gets stressed very easily.
Hmm.
So if you see me stressed, then yeah, some serious things are happening. um, but
And is that something similar with your partner, or do you keep each other in balance, or is that, or
yeah,
you're the
my
one?
partner is the exact opposite.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And is that helping in raising children, like different kind of energy there, or not?
yeah, yeah. Um, so it's it's a different. So what I notice is that mm, for certain things, my kids rather talk to me than to my wife, and for other things, they especially won't talk to me, but rather with my wife. So we
Hmm.
complement each other in certain things. Um, um, it's very difficult to explain how it goes and why they do it. I don't think they actually are very much aware of it, but it happens organically.
Hmm. Yeah, and I assume that, yeah, somehow after, yeah, 10, 15, 20 years, there is some kind of automatism or some kind of way, like, okay, this is a topic for mommy, this is a topic for daddy, in a way, or is that
Yeah, when it's like you said, like if it's rather stress related, they would probably come to me because I stay rather calm and try to rationalize things and yeah, try to find
okay.
a, a solution. Um, my wife is rather the opposite. She would
So if they need
freak out
energy and
and then she would come down again and then at some point and when they want to avoid the freak out part, then they will
will
mostly
come to
come to
you.
me for that.
And I can imagine that sometimes you want to have some energy, and then, like, yeah, they want excitement, that they might first go to your partner, that to if they would tell you something really exciting and you're like, yeah, okay, and you're very calm, then it might feel like you don't care, even if you might care, but it might give,
Yeah,
not, yeah, a different kind of energy to them. um, and it's incredible how that is so important for children, to have that difference in the way. um, and it seems like you, with the partnership with your wife, you kind of found a balance that is also working for your children. So
hmm,
that makes it a really nice achievement. So thank you for sharing, because it is still rather personal. We didn't go into the details, but I think it's still rather personal to share some of these things. So thank you for doing that.
sure.
Talking about personal, let's talk about a personal agility tip. Do you have a personal agility tip to share?
Yeah, we already talked about it a bit. Keep your personal work in progress low. Again,
Hmm.
I'm very bad at this. It's something that I really struggle with. But yeah, having some downtime is something that I realized during the past couple of years that that's very important, especially when, yeah, we're getting older. I noticed that, yeah, sometimes I just have to put on the brakes and have some downtime.
Mm. And is that then also something that your partner might warn you for that, or is that something that you already recognize yourself?
Yeah, my partner used to warn about this. Now I start to recognize it myself,
Okay,
so that
so
I
in
don't
a
have
way,
to
she
overcommit stuff. Have to slow down a bit, and yeah, keep my personal work in progress low.
But
And yeah,
yeah,
with
if you learned it, that's really nice, and especially she might have helped you in learning that, so that's a nice thing.
yeah, it was
That's
also learning about the lean principles that triggered this as well.
yeah, but that's a little bit what I kind of assume. We learn all of this in work, or definitely I learned it, and I saw it when there is too much going on in work, that we're trying as a team to do too much that is not helping. But making that link to the personal took me some time to realize that it's
Hmm.
actually the same thing, and it's yeah, as a team it might be even easier to deal with it than personally. So yeah. Uh, so then it's good that you have a team member in your family in a way. As a, I don't know if you call it a team member or a product owner or whatever, but that your partner can tell you like, Jan, be
Yeah.
careful, you might go in overdrive. And was that easy for you? You said you learned some of that from the agile or from the lean principles, but I can imagine that your partner saw some of these things before, or like you say, before you saw it. Um,
Hmm.
was it easy for you to accept it when she told you things like that? Because that sometimes creates, especially in couples that are so different, sometimes that creates a lot of stress. Was that easy for you? Because you're, like you said, less stressy person.
Uh, might not have been obvious at first. No,
Hmm.
as you said, that's yeah. At first you think, yeah, but that's not true. I can manage this. I've been doing it for so long, and then yeah, yeah, you learn it uh, by hitting a brick wall at some point, and then yeah, you know what? She was right.
I was about to say, yeah, you hit the wall, and then it's like, somebody warned me about that. Like,
Yeah,
maybe she was right. Yeah, I can definitely think that.
that's why
Um,
retrospectives are so important.
that brings me to the question: is there something, and you probably don't call it, but is there some kind of retrospective between you and your partner, where you, at regular moments, you take a break and to look back at the meta level of what things are going on in your life?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we do that regularly.
Yeah, because just for a couple of years, I've been doing something similar with my partner, and it improved our life a lot. Again, we don't call it retrospectives, like because that would probably freak out
Yeah,
her as well.
indeed.
The work thing, let's keep the work things out, but in a way, just looking back once a week on or once every X time on, okay, how are things going, and not so much for the practical stuff, but then more like a typical retrospective. How are things flowing? What can we improve? I think, and I've heard this regularly from a lot of people in the agile space, that yeah, somehow a lot of us are doing it, and it's helping out. So
Yeah,
really
it's not
nice to
like
hear.
we're using sticky notes or something, but
Mhm.
if we have a situation going on, and yeah, then we can sometimes have a look or talk and say I should have done this differently. I should have done this instead, uh, and then mostly she agrees you should have done this differently. But sometimes it's just like, yeah, but given the things that you knew, it's yeah, it rather depends on the situation at hand. But I think being able to reflect is something that's it's very important. If you if you say like I would started out this talk with like, yeah, I've been doing this stuff like software development for 24 years. It's not the 24 years that actually matters. It's being able to reflect over those 24 years that matters. That gives the
Mm.
weight to those 24 years. It's not 24 years doing the 24 years. It's being able to reflect on it.
I
That
really
gives
like
weight.
that because that it also shows for me that's a little bit the difference between sometimes a junior and a senior. Sometimes people say, yeah, if you have 5 or 10 or whatever years as a developer, you're more senior. It's like, well, that depends if you reflect on it. If you do 20 years the exact same year and you're not learning
Yeah.
anything, practices, new languages, whatever, it doesn't matter. But if you're not reflecting and learning, you're still a junior. And I think that's could be the same thing. And then it could be 24 years in one or multiple relationship, but it's the learning about reflecting with these things. And typically with one person you can go a lot deeper after more years, but that doesn't always happen. I really like that, the fact that it's like what you say, it's not the years, it's using the years in a way.
Mhm.
And that I really like that. So already multiple personal tips. Thank you for sharing these one. I
Sure.
really like that. Let's move to that next step about learning about remote work. And so we talked already a little bit about COVID hitting the shutting down the clubs again. Did you do remote working before COVID?
Yeah. Uh, Quite some time actually. I think somewhere from 2011. Uh,
Wow.
not
All right.
not every day, but there were like days that we worked remotely. Something that I used to do even before 2011. I was one of the organizers of the European alt.net community, where we did a monthly, it was basically an online community. Uh, and we did the first meeting somewhere around 2007, 2008. So a very long time, somewhere around that type of time frame. And we used some Microsoft Office online thing that could maximally uh, have 100 participants, and
Wow.
it was given for free because we were doing this .NET thing, this online .NET community. So they gave us the thing for free, so we could have 100 users. And the very first meeting that we organized was already hitting the limit. So we
Which
invite
is a success and a failure at the same
at the
time.
same time, yeah. So we invited Greg Young, and it was in the early days of domain-driven design and CQRS, and he was talking about event sourcing and was like maxed out, like instantly. But it went through, and the recordings are still online, and the blog is still online, and every talk is still there. So we did that remote thing already back in the day, uh, at
Wow.
the end of the nellies. And then working remotely with teams somewhere from 2011. And then, yeah, when COVID hit, I was probably the most experienced one with remote working, because I worked quite a lot of time for a lot of companies remotely before that. So
That's really nice. Um, and are there any tips or anything you've learned along the way? So even before COVID, in a way, you said the way like make sure that you have enough licensing for your tools. That's something I
yeah,
heard.
yeah,
Or that you're not as successful in the beginning. No, I'm just kidding. Is there anything that you've learned you want to share?
yeah. So I worked at this company where we had one team member who was living in Canada, and so there weren't. It was like around that time, 2011, 2012, and So they set up a dedicated machine with Skype on it and a quality camera, and we put that up in the office so that the entire office was visible. We installed a few microphones in the room, some speakers, and then the team member could, when he started working, he could call into the machine using Skype, and then Skype would automatically answer. And then he was in the room on a display on a large screen. Yeah, his head was floating there, and then he could listen to everyone talking inside the office. Like if there were like casual discussions going on, he was able to chime in either on the left side of the room or the right side of the room. He was able to chime in, and then he could speak up, and then he talked about what he wanted to say about the topic that those people were talking about. So he was not really there, but he was able to participate in those office conversations.
Right. So
And I
that's
was really
kind of
happy that it was like very low tech gear. It was like an Intel Atom laptop with of 300 euros, and then a fishbowl camera, and then some um, few microphones that someone probably pulled out of a dumpster, and then we installed everything, and then a few speakers, and that was it. And everyone could chime in. So he could call in from Canada, but if someone was working from home, they could call in as well. And then you saw two heads floating on the screen, or even three or
right.
four heads. And if someone was in the office, we all were there. And we could all chime in, and we could all be at the virtual office, so to speak.
I really like that. And today, with all the new equipment, with all the new tools, would that still be something that you would set up? Uh, does it have an advantage over everything else that we're seeing these days?
Yeah, nowadays we have tools like Gather, uh, which so now I work for I do consulting for um, a remote first company, um, part time, and we use Gather, and that's very easy because all the tooling is there. You don't have to. There is no office, so that's the only office. There is an office where people come on Thursdays, but we usually don't go to the office on Thursday, or the developers are not coming to the office. Once a month or once every 2 months, we go there. But it's not to work, it's about being together. And when we work from home, we use Gather, because then it's also very easy to do remote mobbing or remote pairing. I think that's a very valuable tool for me at this moment.
And when you say people are not coming to the office, or developers not coming for the office, I also kind of hear that for you, or at least in this company, people feel that they have the same kind of value working remote as coming to the office wouldn't bring anything. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, not really, because we do, or at least we try to do as much as remote mobbing as possible. And that's something that I learned about working remotely lately. I've never done it remotely. And after the first couple of weeks were a bit difficult for me, at least. But those co-creation patterns, I learned that they remove so many obstacles and cues in your development process. I can't see any other way anymore today on how to work like that.
And
I can't see myself working on complex code without anyone else there.
But would you do that preferable remote, or do you see that some of these patterns and any things that you've learned around that, the co-creation patterns, would that work also physically, or better, or
Sure,
worse, or how?
they were all invented physically, so they definitely work when everyone's in the same room. But what I've learned is that doing it remotely helps me a lot being able to work remotely.
And then what I kind of hear underneath is that working remote also brings you value for your life in different kind of ways. Is that a correct statement?
Yeah, indeed. At this stage of my life, I very much enjoy working remotely. Especially after COVID, I had a lot of difficulties going back to an office, especially a landscape office, with all the noise, with all the people, calling other people, and I had a very difficult time focusing, even after every company went hybrid. I still have days that I go home with a severe headache of all the noise. And then I notice if I want to avoid being exhausted, having those headaches and other stuff, I have to put noise canceling headphone on. And that completely defeats the purpose
The
of
effect
coming to
of
the
coming
office.
together.
And
Exactly.
then when I do this remotely, I don't have that. So we start, and after some time, someone needs a break. You can just leave and say, okay, I'm going to have a walk in the garden for a few minutes, and I'll come back. And things are still progressing. And then I pick on, and then at some point, someone else drops out for a few minutes, and the entire process just continues.
Yeah, I've heard that many times from people who say ensembling or mobbing is that, where pairing might ask a lot of mental energy because you have to focus, you have to be there. With mobbing or with ensembling, like I prefer to call it, yeah, it's much easier if at some point you're distracted, might be by something else, a phone call or whatever, or just mentally that you say, wait a minute, I need to take a break. You can just take a break and everything else is going on, and then you come back and bring value again 5 minutes later, half an hour later, depending on how much time do you need. That's something I've heard. That yeah, it's nice to hear that for you all these patterns, they really help, and I think that's the most important part. We're here for creating value for our customers or our companies that we're working for, and the location shouldn't matter. And for some people that doesn't work remote, and for other people it doesn't work at home. That doesn't really matter for me. It's like we have all to figure out what works for us. And I do recognize what you say. Some of these larger companies that everybody we should be in the office, but then people are on there with headphones and talking to other people who are not in the office. It's like, yeah, why am I here? That's I also recognize your story about the landscape offices being there with too much noise. Is like, okay, I prefer then, like you, to okay, at home I can focus, I can have a different, I can walk in my home office, so I can do something that I can't do somewhere else. It brings me other kind of value. um, but I think it's good to bring that message, because some people think, people at home, they don't focus. They're distracted all the time, and they do whatever they want to do. And actually, what you're saying is that for you, you can better focus when you're
Yeah,
not in a landscape office.
that's where the XP practices come in,
Mm.
and the mobbing comes in. Like if you if you master pair programming, if you master mob programming, which aren't very difficult practices to start with in the first place, if you do that, if that's if control is your if control is your issue with working remotely, then those putting those practices in place are key for me, for you
Mhm.
to let go as a manager that your people are working from home.
Yeah, I agree. It's that is what we should focus on bringing that value and looking what is working for people
Yeah.
in whatever way. It's
And some
uh,
days I feel very productive and focused, and there are other days that I don't feel that focused or productive, but I can still contribute something, and that's fine as well. So that those practices actually recognize our humanity more than working alone by yourself, whether that's in your home office or in a landscape office with headphones on. Um, I think that's not no longer sustainable anymore in a modern software development environment. And I think there have been many studies about landscape offices over the past decade. I think every large business school of economics has a large study on this on their website that you can go read, and it's all documented. And organizations today still think they have to use landscape offices. Someone
it
told me that, yeah, this there are things that science knows, and then there are things that companies do, and that's a nice example of that.
it's actually it's I can't find it back, but I read it like I think 10 years ago. A story about the company that invented landscape offices. So they were hired by a client. It's a German client that asks for a new kind of office, and so they designed landscape offices with some practices in there and things like. And one of the things that they said in that very first design is like, then you need so much place for booths for people to work in silence. So the small phone booth that we now sometimes see in companies, that was in that original design. You need to have places for two people to meet. You need to have lots of meeting rooms and stuff like that. And so that very first client that ordered that completely threw this away. They said, "Oh, that part in the middle there, we like it, and we can put more people together." And so they did that, and they ignored basically all the best practices that that original company that did the research said. Hey, this is how you could work with all these kind of things. And yeah, I'm sad that it was something I read on the internet back in, I think, probably maybe more than 20 years ago, and it felt like, oh, this is the internet, we will always find it back. Of course, that's no longer true, and so I don't find it back anymore.
Yeah, then you have to check
Uh,
the Internet Archive.
yeah,
Yeah,
but I don't even know where it is. That's it used to be in my links. What was it? There used to be a website that you could gather your links together and then keep track of your links with tags and everything. That's again
yeah,
one of these products that no longer exists. And so
yeah,
I've lost all that data because I didn't, yeah, they took the time to download all my data, which you could before it ended up with. Yeah. Um, that's another thing. But thanks for sharing that, because indeed the landscape, I think many people feel, that it's not working for them. But like you say, there is, or some companies think there is some value in doing it, and they're ignoring basically all the signs. And I think in the agile space, we've seen a lot of that already, by companies trying to go for some of the agile things or what they think is an agile practice, and then also ignoring the science and everything there. Talking about science and research and all kind of things, I want to go to the book that you've read, and I think there is some science and there is some research in that book as well, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
What's a
indeed.
book that you wanted to talk about?
Well, the book that I chose is Implementing Lean Software Development from Concept to Cash by Mary and Tom Poppendieck.
And that's the book.
That's indeed the book. Um, I think this book really fascinates me because it has been published in September 2006, and yeah, today we are 2024. And for me, the concepts that are explained in this book are still quite very futuristic for many organizations here in Belgium.
And not just in Belgium, I would say, indeed.
Yeah, probably, but I can.
Yeah, we focus on what we
my
know, of course.
yeah, indeed. So, and this is an amazing book. It's like every page is filled with these wisdom and knowledge about the entire software development process, and they back it up with examples and studies and papers and everything. And I think I met Mary and Tom once at the Kaizen Conf back in the day, and it was like 2008, I think. It was an open space conference in Austin, Texas, and they were there. They were invited by the organizer, and they showed up. And yeah, we had some great sessions there with them, and it really opened my eyes to how far we still have to go as software in software development as an industry, and what we can still learn. I think Mary and Tom they made some so large of a contribution to our industry that yeah, words are not even enough to describe what they did. And the knowledge is all there. It's one of the four books that they are known for, and they're all so yeah, so very well written and packed with so much knowledge. And it's still so it's not well known. It's not a book that a lot of software developers I know have actually read, and I think they should. And this is one that I read multiple times. This is one that I yeah pick from my shelf the most often.
It's somewhere there as well on
Yeah,
my
I see
shelf.
it on your right,
It's
on my
yeah,
right, not on your left.
indeed. Well, yeah, it's actually I put it back there today because I knew we were talking about it. Because before it used to be on my left as well, much more closer. Because it's one of these books that I sometimes when I need inspiration, I might look up to and go into that. And I so much like the duo that there are. Like, okay, combining because no, Tom is yeah devouring books, I think, at the level that many of us are not. I read a lot of books, but if I hear the way Tom is reading books and then bringing it back and discussing with Mary, and then yeah, that's yeah, it's just a wonderful way of how they work together for creating that wealth of knowledge, and at the same time being very down to earth people, and
Yeah,
like you
indeed.
say, maybe a little bit down to earth, too much in a way that not enough known, because we have um, what I would call more, or other people in the agile community who are much more what we call in Dutch table jumpers, like saying, "Hey, this is what you need to do." They're much more down to earth, but that doesn't mean that their books and their presentation don't bring value. Rather the opposite, I would say.
Yeah, all the talks that Mary did, they're all like gold. She also did during COVID she did an online session of a talk about remote working, and it's pure gold.
Well, you say Mary did, but I
Yeah,
would
Tom is
say
there in the background as well.
exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've worked for a client. We hired both of them to do an internal presentation, and yeah, we did the pre-talk with the two of them discussing, and it's interesting to see also that dynamic there in how they interact with each other, and it's very clear that okay, Mary might be doing the talking, but yeah, the ideas and some of these things are coming from Tom as well. And like I said, it's a very nice collaboration on how they
Hmm.
do it. And yeah, no ego, no drama. It's just like, okay. But at the same time, when we prepared it, they asked some really tough questions about the company and really trying to get into the problems. And they were, yeah, they literally to that manager, they asked really hard questions, and then they were rather deep also in their observations, and it's not like yeah that they just were fluffy. No, they went really deep and said the hard stuff when it was needed to be said, but in a gentle way, and that's yeah, I really like them as well. And like you say, it's I think that was their first book, right?
I
um,
think that was the second book.
or the
Before
second.
that, yeah, before that they had a first one where they actually go over the 7 types of waste
Oh yeah,
in
yeah,
lean.
okay, that.
That was the first book, and
Yeah,
that
lean
one,
software development. Yeah,
yeah,
the agile toolkit. That's
yeah,
the one. The goldish brown
yeah,
book
indeed,
cover. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Um, yeah, that's how I got to know them. But this book, I yeah, kind of opened much more. Like you probably. Thank you for bringing that book because it's for me. I on purposely don't put any boundaries what books people can bring, and it's nice that sometimes people bring back an older book that still brings value, and that, like you say, probably much more people should read, and
Hmm.
it's not because it's yeah almost 20 years old that it doesn't bring any value anymore, and yeah, sometimes people might need to learn some of these almost basic principles, I would say.
I don't see it growing out of date in the next decade or so. Uh, I think it's still very much on par.
Mhm. Yeah, that's both good and sad. It's good because it shows that it's a book, an important book that is good for people to grow and to learn. At the same time, it's sad because it means our industry is not using the knowledge that is existing out in
Indeed,
the world.
yeah.
So yeah, it's a
You
little
see
bit sad.
that with other books as well. One of the books that literally changed my life is The Goal
Hmm.
from Eli Goldratt, especially the story where he talks about the camping trip
With
uh,
the I
with the
was about
backpack.
to say, yeah, with the backpack, but also with the leash. I don't know. I don't want to call it the leash. The rope. The rope.
Yeah, like
And
everyone,
having
yeah, not the fastest, the slowest one should go first.
exactly, but
And
that the
that,
way it's told and the way, yeah, it's a wonderful story. Um, probably I was about to say 20 years old, but isn't it more like
I
40
think
years old?
I think it was the first edition, wasn't it from like the early 80s,
Yeah, I'm trying to.
1983, 1984, maybe even earlier.
Yeah, I'm trying to find. I see the third edition was published in 2004, so that's already 20 years old. So yeah, I don't know when was the first edition, but definitely, yeah, it's incredibly both old and at the same time, yeah, very important, I would say.
Yeah,
It's and it's interesting how many people. Well, first of all, Mr. Goldratt published quite a similar kind of books with for different kind of industries, I would say, but all talking about very similar kind of things. But then the concept, not even talking about the the technology or the ideas of the goal, but just the way the story is told has been copied by a couple of other books as well,
Yeah,
because
indeed.
it's such a powerful way of telling, of helping people to understand difficult concepts. I think
Yeah, and I'm
that's
guilty about that as well. One of my, so I mentioned I still blog from time to time, and the most popular blog posts I wrote are the ones that I use the same concept, where I
mm,
tell the story about two pairs talking to each other while they're writing software development, while they're writing software and discussing ideas about refactoring, discussing ideas about TDD, and those are the ones that resonated the most with people. Those are still the most popular ones on my blog.
mm,
So the style of storytelling, actually, the storytelling thing is really working. Um,
mhm. Yeah, I agree. It's that's why I wanted to bring it up, because it sometimes people think, yeah, it's that concept of the goal, but there is much more. He worked really hard. I have no idea how long, but it's a masterpiece in so many different ways.
yeah, indeed.
It's an important thing. So people, if you're listening to this and you haven't read the goal from Goldratt, well, stop listening. Well, no, please keep listening, but still buy the book online and read it as fast as possible, because I think it is a very valuable book. So we talked about, or the idea was to talk about one, and we end up talking about another groundbreaking book, I think. So thank you for bringing two really old books, but really powerful books.
Yeah, indeed.
So I want to move to, for me, one of the most interesting questions, especially after conversations like this one. What's a question that you think I should also ask you, and what's the answer?
Um, this one I found the most difficult one, but then I came up with one, and then for me it was quite easy.
Hmm.
So the question that you might have asked me, so what do you consider to be the biggest challenge for the next 20 years? And
Hmm.
if you would ask me that, I think the biggest challenge that everyone on this planet has at this time is fighting climate change.
Hmm.
Um, leaving the planet behind, leaving a habitable planet behind for future generations. I think that's going to be the biggest challenge for everyone in the next decades or the next decades. Um, and that's something that I consider a challenge for myself. Or I want to try to contribute to this in any way possible. And at some point, IT will have to step up and um, do some contributions there as well. And there has been some research on uh, so-called green IT or green software development, um, but it's still very early days. And there are some, I think O'Reilly published a book about it this year, or is going to do one this year. I'm not sure how it's called. And there are some podcasts here and there, and you see some talks being scheduled on conferences that do touch on this topic. And I think that topic is going to be the most important topic in the next couple of years. It's not going to be crypto, it's not going to be AI, although much of the talk is about that. I think it's going to be fighting climate change in whatever way we can.
Yeah, it's definitely something that is on a lot of people's minds. It's one of the things that are coming up. There's a couple of people here on the show that have been talking about these things. There is actually a manifesto published by the Agile Alliance that is talking about that as well. So I'm trying to come up with the right name. I think it's the Sustainable Manifesto. I'm not sure anymore. I know that there's a couple of people that will now be very mad at me that I forgot the name, but I'll definitely put it in the show notes if it's not the Sustainable Manifesto. I will put the link there as well, because I think, yeah, like you say, it's in many different ways important. And IT, well, I think I read this week that I read somewhere an article about the number of energy that IT is using, or the internet is using. If you compare it to other countries or to countries, I think the internet would already be in the top 5, I think, or the top 7. I don't remember anymore, of most consuming countries, if it would have been a country. And it's yeah, very logical, of course, if you see how much energy even back in the days a Google search was, and AI is using a lot more. So yeah, there's a lot of things that we're doing. Of course, the Googles and the Amazons of this world have been working really hard on making cheaper, or not just cheaper, but more green data centers, because of course for them it's costing a lot of money, but it's also very bad for the environment. When you say you want to do something for that, could you give examples of things that you're thinking, or that you're actually doing to yeah.
Well, it's both on a personal and a professional level. One of the company that I'm currently consulting with, they actually are working on reducing um, CO2 levels from large buildings for their heating and cooling systems. So they have a
Wow.
product for that. So that's one of the things that I'm gladly working on these
So
days.
did I hear that you kind of also, that it was a choice when you selected that client, that you say, oh, okay, you're working on that, so I'm more inclined to work for you?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. So the opportunity came up, and yeah, I never hesitated a bit about it. So for me, it was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. And I think if this stops, then at some point, or if it never stops, then, or if I should do something else, then I will probably look into that space first, when if
Okay.
it's possible, of course.
Yeah,
So
of
I
course.
think that's important for me to do at this point. And on a personal level, yeah, what everyone's doing, um, um, yeah, isolating your homes, switching to green energy, all the things that's related with that. I also became a vegetarian, convinced vegetarian during COVID. So that's something that I learned from my daughter. Um, Everyone actually, and I also knew that the way animals are treated these days, just for meat consumption, it's not okay. Everyone knows that. And that's an idea that we don't like to reflect on. You just go to the grocery store, or you just go to the butchery, and then you buy your food, and then you eat it without thinking about it. And then my daughter said, you know what, I'm going to stop eating meat. And I asked, yeah, why? And she started explaining this to me. And then I say, okay, I think you have a good point. And I started reducing my meat consumption. And then I do what I usually do. I pick up a few books to see how animals are, like pigs and chickens and cows are actually doing in a factory farm these days, and it's horrible. And that's when I decided, okay, now I'm informed enough to say I stop eating meat, I stop eating fish, um, stop eating eggs, and then try to replace it with something else. And then, so yeah.
It's I've recognized a lot of that story. We've already been. I don't know when it started. It started also with our daughter. That we drastically reduced the meat we're eating. We're still eating meat, but it's like where it used to be 7 days a week. It's now. I don't think it's even 3 days a week anymore because indeed what you're saying. Um, I think it is important that all of us we do take a step in reducing that, because like you were saying, when once you start reading about it and the effect that just what it is on the nature that and how yeah it's incredible, and especially the last couple of or decades, I would say, the way animals have been treated and the effect that it has on our planet is incredible.
Yeah, this whole factory farming thing, it's simply not sustainable.
No,
It's a thing from the past 2 decades, of the past 20 years, because before that things were also not good, but much more low scale, on a smaller scale than the things that are happening now.
exactly, and it's that somehow they made it more efficient by growing larger forms and whatever. But it's when you look at how would I say it, at the total picture of the planet and everything, it's like it's not just about money. There's other parts of that we need to consider these things. So thank you for sharing that. And it's something I like when you bring it up, because it's like I said, you're not the only one who cares about this. It's something I've interviewed like Maryse Meinen, who wrote that manifesto together with Jutta Eckstein, and so it's something that pops up with lots of people caring about this and looking at the multiple ways on how can we basically what you said, the leaving the planet in a habitable way behind. It's I would consider it part of our responsibility to our children. It's of course, both of us, we have 3 children. That's also not really so good for the planet in a way. That have friends that told me like, if but I only have 1 child, it's better in a way, but there might be other things. But then you have to, for me, look at the bigger picture of other stuff, like you say, making sure that we have sustainable energy at home, and all the other kind of things. I think that is important. So thank you for sharing that. I want to move to that last question. Who do you think I should ask next?
Well, I have a big list, but we already talked about Tom and Mary Poppendieck. Those are the ones that I don't choose now because I already mentioned them. But as a hint, you should have them.
They were invited, but I don't want to go into the details. But they both decided not to join. So it's a couple of people who I think we're now at 17 who said no for multiple kind of reasons, and Tom and Mary are one of these that said like for multiple reasons, which I think is a shame. So I agree with you, but at the same time, I also respect, of course, when people say no. Exactly.
That's limiting your personal work in progress.
I know much more why they said no, but of course I'm not going to spoil their privacy when they share that with me. And I think for me that is part that I want. This is why I go a little bit deeper into that. For me, it's part of I invite people, and people themselves decide if it's possible, what moment is possible, and then we look for a moment that, like, yeah, like actually today also we're recording it on a Friday evening. There was a problem earlier this week that we couldn't do it together, and so that is also part of, for me, an important part. Like we try to schedule it, it doesn't work, okay, we reschedule it and we do it at the moment that it works for both of us. I think that is important, and that's the exact same thing. If people say no, we prefer not to do it. So yeah, these should have been or could have been here, but
the ones that I chose, which are those two fine ladies, are also uh, big examples for me personally. Is Lisa Crispin and Janet Gregory.
and so, well, Janet has been on the show. She was actually number 31, if I'm correct, if I remember correctly. But it's really wonderful conversation, and it is very interesting to see that actually Lisa I have known much earlier than I know Janet, but for whatever strange reason, and this is Lisa, she has not been on the show yet. She's interested yeah, we still just need to figure out the time. And I'm really glad that you invite her, because like with some bigger names, people kind of always assume that they're there and they don't invite them. And that's, I think, a little bit how it happened with Lisa. So when you proposed her, I was like, yes, finally I can ask her. And so yeah, now we need to just figure the time out and make that happen. So you said before you mentioned the names that these two are big examples and are really important. Could you say some more about that?
Yeah, so I think their books are very influential. They write about testing and agile testing, but I think testing is not something that is the sole responsibility of a testing profile or a QA person in a team. I think it's everyone's responsibility. And for me, those books are, those books have been very influential. Especially they have this condensed version, the Agile Testing Condensed book, which is like the greatest hits from those early books that they wrote. And it's still packed with, again, so much knowledge and so much wisdom. They're not only about testing, but the entire software development lifecycle. And they've been mostly in the testing communities, but something that I would like to see is that some more software development conferences would invite those two fine knowledgeable ladies and have them as the keynote speaker, because they bring so much to the table that with all their knowledge, not a lot of people know this, but like the first book by Ken Beck about extreme programming, that's the most well known, and it has two editions, but those are parts of a series about extreme programming back in the day. And one of those books was also written by Lisa, and it was called, if I'm not mistaken, Testing with Extreme Programming or something like that. It was a big blue book, and if you read that book, it's almost 20 years old. It's still relevant. It's great stuff. For me, a software developer is a tester, and a tester is a software developer. There's no such thing as you're a tester and I'm a software developer, so I don't have to know anything about testing software. One of the questions that I usually ask during most of my talks is, I ask the room, do you know the testing pyramid? And then everyone raises their hand. They all learned about the testing pyramid. And then I ask the question, do you know about the testing quadrant? And then nobody except one or two people who are or have been to one of my earlier talks know about this. And the testing quadrant is like an entire chapter in their book, and explain why it's important, and which also comes in with the lean principles that Mary and Tom Poppendieck talk about. So yeah, I think Lisa and Janet have been very influential throughout my career, at least, and I hope they are able to touch more people, not just testers.
Just for the record, the testing quadrant, I think it's Brian Merrick who invented it.
Yeah, it's Brian Merrick, but I learned through their work.
They made it very famous, and I just quickly put, if I can show, I can put a quickly thing of the multiple books together. So the agile testing, more agile testing, and then the testing extreme programming that you talked. And the agile testing condensed, actually, it's a book that we've translated with the community in Belgium to Dutch. So there is a Dutch translation. It has my name on it, but actually it says I just helped create the community to do that. It was incredible to do that kind of book with just I don't remember. I don't want to say a number, but it was just a number of people together that we said, okay, we'll all just translate one page, because that testing condensed was a very small book, and it's incredibly how fast we translated that. And that was actually, if you go to LeanPub, I'll put the link as well in the show notes, that small little booklet. It's been translated in many different kind of languages. That's what I really like. It's like they said, really like, okay, this is an important thing, not just for testers, not just for developers. They aimed it also at managers, that they understand the concept and all these things. And I think if you're anyone who's involved in writing software and you want to learn about testing, I think that's a really good book to learn about a lot of these concepts. So thank you for bringing that up, because indeed, I think these two ladies, I do remember in the beginning of the Agile communities and everything, when Agile started, a lot of people said, yeah, we don't need testers. And so, yeah, the Agile and testing doesn't work together. It's like, no, that's not what it says. Brian Merrick was there from the beginning. It is important, but I think indeed what Lisa and Janet did was make it so much more clear, like, how do you then actually do that, combining Agile and testing? And I think that made a huge difference. So thank you for bringing them.
On their website, they even have a free paper that you can download, where they talk about holistic testing, which even pushes testing more at every cycle of the process. Where it used to be this phase in the waterfall process, like at the end, that no one did. Now it's everywhere, like testing your assumptions, testing even before any software is written. I think those are very important concepts.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's I mean, we've seen it just a couple of weeks ago. We're at the start of August, and it was I think it was this halfway in July that we had the huge outbreak of software that released and turned down millions of Microsoft computers, Microsoft Windows computers, because of in a way, bad tested software of that created a lot of problems. Okay, I don't want to go too much into detail. Actually, just today, oh come on, I can't come up with the name. Dave Farley published something on his blog, on his YouTube channel that has much more details. He did it multiple times on this particular problem, but testing and is big part of what he wrote there or what he talks about. It's so important. If you want to write quality software, like you say, it's just everybody that needs to care. But what Lisa and Janet did was helping out people. What you then do? How does that work in that way? So
Exactly.
thank you for bringing that up. Okay. That was the last question. I'm really thankful for your time and for everything. And you literally said to me before we started, probably by 8:30 it will be that I'm out of energy, and it's exactly 8:30. Well, 29. So we still have 1 minute left. For if people want to reach out to you, what would be a good way to get in touch with you?
Well, all my all communication details are on my website.
And I think
That's
that's the one.
indeed exactly. That's principalit.eu. Um, my email is on there, and on the socials, I'm mostly on Mastodon and LinkedIn.
I didn't prepare Mastodon because it's not always sure how many people are using it, but I do see much more use these days in LinkedIn. So I added that one. Not sure if you know the full numbers at the end by heart, but that should be the one.
Indeed, yeah, and like I said, everything is on my website.
On your website. I think that's the most important link, indeed. Well, Jan, thank you very much for your time. It's been
Thank
a
you, Bart.
wonderful way to spend my Friday evening with you, giving me lots of energy to discuss about lots of these things. So thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And I'm pretty sure we'll catch up somewhere later at whatever conference or event.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Thank you for watching Who's Agile, where the stories of agilists come to life. I hope you liked today's interview. Subscribe if you're not subscribed and want to get to know other agilists.